Something's happening. Now streaming live on Facebook.
Oh, I got a little Facebook message that you're streaming live.
Really?
Notification.
Oh my gosh, we're doing it. This is super exciting. Okay, cool. Okay, I can't see it on Facebook, but I'm just going to assume that it's working, and I'm also going to close
We can
Facebook because it's like 20 seconds. Yeah, it says it's 20 seconds behind.
Okay.
So that's awkward to look at.
Everything about looking at yourself on or any of that's always ends up being a little awkward, right? Yeah. Every time I have to listen to my own voice on my podcast, I'm like, ooh, is that really what I sound like?
Exactly. Kind of a cringe.
It's good for me though. It's making me face that whole like love thyself thing.
Yeah, exactly. Which is imperative when you were self-employed, I believe.
It's so imperative to be able to like hear that and go, oh God, what am I doing? What am I thinking? And then go, wait, no, what were you thinking? Why did you do this in the first place? Other people want to hear it. You have something to say.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, cool. So I'm going to start off. First of all, welcome everybody here in the Female Entrepreneur Mental Health Awareness Facebook group. It is so wonderful to just be part of this community of almost 300 female entrepreneurs that are dedicated to looking after their mental health. So important. My name is Laurel Ann Stark. This is our very first live broadcast in the group, which is super cool. And I'm really delighted to have Robin Johnson join me today. And Robin and I met on Facebook, obviously, in the Female Digital Nomad group. And we are going to chat today about some basics around mental health awareness, specifically for female entrepreneurs. So let's see here. Robin, can you tell me how to pronounce your website? Is it Temenos?
Sure. It's Temenos.
Temenos. Okay. And what does that mean?
Yeah. So the meaning behind it is the whole reason I went with that name. I know it's a little bit obscure, but I've been in love with that name since grad school. And basically it means sacred space. But if you dig a little bit deeper, it goes all the way back to like the ancient world. So it's this idea of setting a sacred temenos. So the ancients would, sit around a campfire, sit around something, usually within a circle. And the whole idea was that you set an intention to go there. And in the ancient world, the different cultures obviously had different meanings of it. But you speak with like the sages and the medicine men and women of the group, and it just is a place that you would go to find guidance, to discuss things that were going on within the community. So the ancient Greeks used to do temenos setting before any kind of policy reform and within their Senate, and a lot of their democratic process was brought around first before we discuss anything like policy reform or what we need to do about this issue or anything like that. Is let's reel it back, make sure we're setting it with this intention of it being a safe and sacred space. And so I fell in love with that name in grad school during, I think it was like a group processing class, and it just kind of like resonated in the back of my brain. And then I just never really forgot it and was very excited as soon as it kind of made sense to just go for it with my business. So yeah, that's what inspired it. And so the company's name is Temenos Health and Wellness. And so I'm really excited. Yeah. And I'm sure we can get more into what it's about and everything, but I want to make sure I'm giving a proper chance for you to introduce what you and I are here to discuss too. So
yeah, exactly. And I'm just going to, for all the folks that don't know Robin, give you an idea of her credentials and sort of why I wanted to bring her into this group and what we're going to talk about today. So since 2009, Robin has been working in the mental health field with a focus on trauma, which a lot of us women have. After receiving a BA in sociocultural, pardon me.
Very fun.
Applied anthropology and a master's in marriage and family counseling. From there, Robin spent several years connecting with some of the most underserved demographics in the US as a trauma specialist, eventually taking on a more leading role as a crisis supervisor. So lots of cred there, lots of experience.
Thank you.
And since leaving community health, that's when she started her private practice, Temenos Health. And the focus is on the common threads that we all require to feel an overall sense of wellness and what that means for each of us. And Robin is providing online therapy and counseling through some of the approaches being life coaching, mindfulness, cognitive behavioral therapy, which I'm a huge fan of, marriage and family systems theory, group therapy, art therapy, depth psychology, soul work, health coaching, psychodynamics, and psychoanalytics. So, wow, you bring a lot to the table.
Well, thank
That is
you.
amazing.
Thank you. You know, I try to cast a bigger net, and then the idea is within that, ultimately, when it comes down to it, whatever modality I can say I'm trained in, it means very little compared to who I'm working with. So, you know, when questions are asked, like, "Oh, what's your style? What's this?" It's whatever suits the person the best. And I've been lucky with my education and my experience that within those things you talked about, you know, everything and every modality just gets thrown at you. So I've been lucky enough that I have a pretty wide array of tools in my tool belt for that. So.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I would say that you've got a lot of credit to speak
Thank
to
you.
what I want to talk about today. So, in my research that I've been doing for my online platform that I'm working on, I have come across various data inputs that basically state that um, female entrepreneurs are at a much higher risk than your average bear for experiencing poor mental health. Not necessarily mental
Mhm.
illness, but poor mental health. And some of the considerations in there are like obviously like trauma background, harassment, discrimination, gender bias, et cetera, but also things just like lots of stress and financial uncertainty and isolation and things like that. And so I thought it'd be great to talk to you about.
Yeah.
So that's a big, heavy, sort of icky set of problems, but what do we do about it? Like, how can we take good care of our mental health, especially if we're just starting out? I know there's a couple ladies in this group that are just like brand spanking new entrepreneurs. They're looking into the void and they're just like,
Yeah. No, that
what am I
void is
supposed to do?
huge and terrifying when you're standing at it. So,
Yeah.
no, I think you bring up so many great things that I think are so important for us to focus on. And I love the way you put it. It's just, you know, understanding how to kind of work with those things because we all, to some degree, I mean, you know, not to say out there like all women entrepreneurs are traumatized or anything like that. Of course, that's not the case. But I think if we look at the unique set of environmental situations that we're put in every day as entrepreneurs and as women, and
Yeah.
then you put those together, they're gonna do things like increase your stress and anxiety. They're gonna do things like, you know, force us to deal with our shame, deal with body image, to deal with image in general. I mean, so much of this is about how do I get myself out there? How do I get my brand out there? And
Mm,
then when all of a sudden that talks about like, like how do you expose yourself? How do you be vulnerable and professional at the same time? That's terrifying.
mhm,
And, you know, like that, you had that void. And without those tools or that support that I think this group and other groups, you know, and other women that are trying to do this work are really offering, can be really lonely
mhm,
and back to isolation, like you said, which I think is really a very huge rooted problem and a lot of just mental distress. So there's all kinds of stuff out there, and you know I'm happy to dive into all of them at length. That's something that I can geek out for hours.
Same. We could just do this till dinner as far as I'm concerned.
I know, right?
So okay, one thing that let's start off with the exposure element of things.
Yeah.
I noticed that. So just to like give a little blurb for those who don't know me, my name is Laurel Ann Stark, and I've been self-employed for 17 years. My background's in marketing, and after working with tons of business owners, like thousands of business owners, after many many years, realizing that you could have the best marketing plan in the whole wide world, but if you are dealing with mental health stuff, that it'll actually prevent you from executing your marketing plan. So what I see all the time with my clients is that they want to be able to promote themselves and market themselves because that's what you're supposed to do in business. But there's all this internal resistance that comes up in different ways around that, like who do I think I am, like imposter syndrome, shame, embarrassment, just like total paralysis, lots of fear. So when we talk about exposure, can you talk about sort of why that might be hard for women and what to sort of do to mitigate those fears and that discomfort, if
Of
there's anything?
course. Of
Yeah.
course. I think that's such a huge question. And, you know, I think where we are right now, it's tricky to talk about these things without bringing up some phrases that end up becoming redundant. But I think the reason that they're becoming redundant is because they need to be said again and again. And
Yeah.
so, you know, if we're looking at things from an exposure perspective and just what it means to be out there. Let's face it, like we all still know the phrase women are meant to be seen and not heard. You know, and these are the things I'm saying I think they're getting a little bit over talked about, but it's I think the basis and the reality, you know, if you come in and you're aggressive and you're assertive, you get labeled as a bitch or you get labeled as this. And, so as women, just how do we kind of find our entrance into those conversations to be seen is very scary.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of times we find ways to get in, and then we're in, and then all of a sudden we're exposed, and it's like, holy shit, I don't have the armor necessarily. And so the ways that we do that to protect ourselves are usually maladapted techniques, and not always. I mean, there's plenty of bosses out there that they have their, center together. They can go in and command a room and deal with all of those vulnerabilities and do it with courage. And I think that to me is like the ultimate goal, right? Is to like walk into that room and feel, oh my gosh, I am the only woman in here. I'm, 10 years younger than everybody or 10 years older than everybody, or oh my gosh, totally wore the wrong jeans. What do I do? I mean, and so much of that can throw it off. So finding ways to just, I think really starting with accepting ourselves and accepting that that is going to be a part of it and that it is part of the process. And obviously that's so much more easily said than done. And we can kind of evolve into some techniques for that. But just in relation to the exposure, I think that's really where it starts, is that there's just not a lot of support set up for us to take that step. I mean, it's a big precipice that we're standing on as women, and there's plenty of us that are doing it. And we have, amazing mentors out there that we can kind of see how they did it and help guide us there and all of those. But ultimately, there's a lot of just individual processing of, okay, I guess I got to get myself out there. Here I am. Oh my gosh, what do I do? And then it creates something where I think it's really easy, like you were saying with the imposter syndrome. We do that. And then if we don't get the results that we want for our career,
Mhm.
it's so easy to start tacking on all the emotional things like that. Oh, well, I must have failed in some way. I must have done something wrong. And we start beating ourselves up. And then immediately before we know it, we just start retreating back.
Yeah. Robin, I'm taking notes because I'm such a geek about this stuff, but I heard
I love
some
it.
really awesome stuff around the notion of acceptance as being sort of a really primary place to start, with accepting ourselves that we're going to have these fears. Sorry, my dog is
It's okay.
protecting me from something dangerous, I'm sure. Sorry about that, Rocket.
That's okay. I
Um,
have one of those too. And every now and then she comes in just right at the time. I'm like, really?
yeah, exactly. It's probably like delivery. Anyway, so accepting ourselves that we're going to feel anxious, we're going to feel scared, we're going to feel maybe not ready, we're not going to feel comfortable necessarily with the notion of putting ourselves out there because of that notion that we should be seen and not heard, and that there's sort of like cultural stuff,
Hmm.
right? Accepting that there's a lack of support around the emotional or maybe mental health components of business, and not necessarily with the practical stuff, but like just, being isolated and like dealing with these situations. Accepting that the system itself is sort of not helpful, in that, like you were saying, like my age is wrong or my clothing is wrong, and just being very much criticized for our appearance. And then that we have a tendency to internalize blame as being our personal fault when there's a lot of other factors. Is that a good summary?
Absolutely. I feel like, I mean, hell, I don't know how, if it's a synopsis or not, but I like where you're going with it.
Cool, cool. Also, I am going to get this transcribed because I
Okay,
feel like it would be a very useful thing for people to be able to read as well. But
perfect.
okay, so accepting
Absolutely.
that, like, it actually is this hard.
The acceptance piece,
Yeah.
I do. And I think when we look at acceptance too, there's so much work that can be done within it, and it's really easy to just say, "Oh, I just need to work on self acceptance," or "Oh, I just need to do this, do that," and I'm not sure that there's a lot of conversation that's coming in a way that gets to a really deeper root of it
Yeah.
and the soul aspect of it. And I know that sounds really deep, but it makes me think of, I'm sure a lot of women in the entrepreneurial world are used to or familiar with Brene Brown. But the way she talks about vulnerability, I think that tapped into something that our collective unconscious has just been really needing to hear. And
Yeah.
whether or not it resonates with men more than women, I don't think is really important. I just know it resonated with me and my female peers. And so I think a lot of that speaks to just, especially within an entrepreneurial world or a business world that has been generationally defined as very masculine. And I don't even necessarily mean that just by men. I mean everything that, the policies, the way that the business meetings are set up, the way that even the offices, it's very just masculine, right? Like cut, dry angles. And not that that's bad, but there hasn't been, much feminine voices. And that's okay. But it means that we have to kind of adapt to that world. And in order to do that, we're looking at all of those things in the ways that we aren't adapted yet. And
Mhm.
so rather than looking at those things and going, oh shit, like, okay, I need to adapt this, I need to adapt this, it's more like, no, this is me. It might feel yucky when looked at this, gorgeous glamazon who's 5'10" and has this well-tailored suit and is killing it at the meetings. And I'm coming and going, I don't know what to do. Or when I'm the only female in something. Um, but yeah, just overall kind of breaking that down a little bit and understanding that we are brave enough to be vulnerable to say that sucks. That feeling really, really sucks.
Mhm.
And I think that's the start with acceptance. It's not to say that it always is about acknowledging things that suck. It just means look at your situation, take a couple of breaths, knowing that you're not alone and that it might not feel like you're accepted and it might feel like you're an outsider. But I think once you acknowledge what your feelings are with that, for example, if I go in and I start thinking into a meeting or into an office space, oh my gosh, everybody here is 10 years older. I'm the only female. Oh my gosh, what if they think that I overdressed? Or what if I look too sexual? What if I look too that? Rather than for me breaking it down and saying how it's different, go, yeah, you know what? Maybe I did dress a little bit sexy today, but that's also me. Like I own those clothes because I like them. I put that on today because I felt good. Not the reflection of what I'm worried about seeing, or if I'm, a little bit younger, and go, yeah, but kick ass. Look where I am. Um, or even just say, yeah, that's going to be harder, but that's okay. And anything that you're feeling along the way is okay. And I think the biggest thing with that is just staying present with what all of those feelings are. We're not going to fix them. We're not going to all of a sudden by saying, oh, okay, so I feel this way. If I can accept it, then it'll go away. It's not going to go away right away. But I promise you that as soon as you look at all of those things, we've all been in a situation where we're in a room and we're just like, oh God. And then our brains start. And
Mhm.
before we know it, we have no idea what we're supposed to be talking about, doing, or anything. If we just slow down and say, okay, yeah, I am a little bit uncomfortable right now. And maybe my boss doesn't accept me, but I do. I accept myself. And even if you're just saying it and you don't even really mean it at that point, at least know that you deserve to mean it at some point. And I think that's a good start. Um, and that's a lot of the work that I really hope to be offering and to being able to do is just start laying those groundwork for how do you make that transition from I can look at all of these things and I can see the problem, but how do you kind of go down into the deeper work? And there's that saying, I'm going to get it wrong, but the concept of basically like tending to your own soul tends to the soul of the world. And I think
Oh, that's a good one. I heard that.
I may have misquoted it and I don't know who said it first, but it's the general concept.
Yeah, I'm writing it down.
Perfect. No, I figured.
That's great. So you so much juice here. Okay, so what I'm hearing like is that first of all, thank you for validating that the sort of workplace environment, whether we're self-employed or freelancing or we've got a side hustle or even a contract work, or if we own our own business and we're like entrepreneur or whatever, that the workplace is generationally defined by the masculine, which
Yeah.
I think, I never even thought about the notion that like, yeah, even the offices are like sometimes like beige, cubicles or whatever, but like,
Right.
yeah, like most women I know anyway would not have decorated it like that. And maybe some
Yeah.
places would be great. And actually I was reading, I forget what study it was, but one of the reasons that women go into business for themselves, and it's not the top five by any stretch, but it's to create their own aesthetically pleasing environment.
Interesting.
So there is that is
Okay.
in play. If you walk into a place that doesn't feel like yeah, you had any part in creating it, of course it's going to have like even
Yeah,
subtle
exactly.
sort of I don't belong effect. So thanks for articulating that because I think that there's sort of an interesting set of work that can be done around like blaming men, which I'm
Hmm.
not interested in and I don't think is productive or helpful, but also acknowledging that a society built by men does make it more difficult to succeed as a businesswoman is basically all. So thank you for defining that.
Yeah.
And
Thank
then
you
it
for taking
sounds,
it deeper. I think you like put right into where I was going with that thread. You finished it perfectly for me. So thank
oh,
you.
yeah, I'm obsessed with this stuff. So I love that. It sounds also like staying present, being mindful, and like acknowledging negative self-talk, but also like working to do like the CBT thing, which is like the opposite positive thought. Like, yes,
Hmm.
I feel like I don't belong, da da da, and maybe I'm not accepted, but I accept myself, and I
Exactly.
like this outfit, and
Yeah.
I think that they should have a plant in here.
Yeah, exactly. And whether or not any of that, changes or, like I was saying, if you are feeling insecure, then all of a sudden your thoughts start racing, and maybe you don't for that day believe like, hey, I got this. I'm a boss. I can handle it. Maybe you don't believe that, but you had to believe that at some point. And if you didn't, you should, because you can. We all can. You wouldn't be listening to this if you didn't believe that you could go out there and kick ass. And so connect with whatever part of you that felt that spark and that inspiration in the first place, even if it's not there. Just know it was. I mean, I keep grabbing my heart center, and I can get into more of that a little bit more, but that's just where I feel a lot of stuff, and that's just a chakra. So like there's meditations you can do around that, but even that is a great example of it. So if I'm feeling a little bit overwhelmed and I don't know what's going on and I'm stuck in my head, I find myself doing something like this, and all it does is bring my awareness back to here. And whether or not this is calm and centered, I can't predict. But I know that at some point in there, there is a me that says, fuck yeah, I can do this. Yeah, I'm confident. Yeah, I have the skills. And yeah, I look good today. And that's okay. That doesn't make me any less intelligent. It doesn't make me any less respectable. Or there might be days where you're like, yep, my hair's in a messy bun and it's going to be like this for the next week. And
I
just
love that.
connecting back to that part that
Yeah, I
accepts you even if it's not there presently.
yeah. So I heard two things out of that. Like one being getting into your body and out of your head a little bit, and then the other one connecting with your purpose and like original sort of motivation and
Absolutely.
prior confidence.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's in there in all of us, we have it. We have that drive. And, that's another segue I'll try not to deviate too much from. But I think a lot of it is that we have these conversations, we have these sparks within us. And a lot of us are lucky enough that we have professional women to say, hey, here's what I'm thinking, here's these ideas. But some of us maybe we're not. And those conversations, let's face it, again, I hate to get on the bandwagon of it's not anti-man or anything like that, but when we bring up those conversations in a male dominated situation, whether it's lunch or beers with the friends, our voice just doesn't quite resonate the same as it does when we sit together with other women who get it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, there's also like so much science that proves like how much we're interrupted as well, and how often we even get to speak in terms of like actual minutes.
Absolutely.
And there was a study that just came out that basically the conclusion was that unless there's four women at a table with one man, the time that women spend speaking is not equal to the time that men spend speaking at any given table. And this is like studies through Stanford have proven this. Um, there's a lot of science that just kind of concludes that a lot of what we deal with is actually just it's bias. It's just bias,
Hmm.
which is I think again not to be dwelling on the issues, but my belief is that it's impossible to get to a place of solution if you're not being honest with yourself or don't have the awareness around what the actual issues that you're grappling with are.
Exactly.
And I find that a lot of women, especially new entrepreneurs, tend to internalize and have a lot of shame around their ability to succeed because they've been taught or heard this notion that we live in a meritocracy, which is basically like if you work hard enough and you grind and you hustle and you have
Hmm.
vision and you do it all right and you like look great, then you can have and do and be whatever you want. And that is categorically incorrect, given that
Absolutely.
our society is not fair. There is bias, there's privilege, there is it's not a fair playing field. And I think that I see women all the time have shame around their inability to succeed at a particular level, especially right out of the gate, and without acknowledging that like all this other stuff is like underneath the surface that's coming into play that actually makes it so much harder, I believe, for women.
Absolutely. And I think it's really easy for us to start thinking that that's a flaw within ourselves. And for whatever reason, we're trained, maybe just because our nature is typically more nurturing and we want to tend to that kind of stuff. So when we feel it within, our own self, it's immediately like, oh, okay, well, I guess that's on me. I guess that's my fault. And even if we know it's not true in the back of our head, our brains and our psyches and everything that's built into it. And this actually, I could loop back into some of the trauma and shame stuff. But it's immediately, we have these neural pathways that are built in to just drive us down these old thought patterns. And a lot of them aren't serving us anymore.
Can you please speak about that? Because I'm going to ask you
Yeah,
this question and then I'm going to just barf out some stats because I've been in the land of
please.
stats
I
for so
love
long.
your stats, by the way. Oh my
Thank
gosh, you
you.
got some
I'm
good
gonna
ones.
my report, it's gonna be published in the next like 2 weeks, fingers crossed.
Yay.
Yeah, super excited. But so 30-ish% of women will experience some sort of violence against them in their lifetime. 30, 35-ish%. And then it's like 50-ish% of women who will experience some sort of harassment in the workplace. Or not even necessarily in the workplace, but harassment. So if you've got like a 30 and a 50,
Yeah.
that's like 80, right? And I know that's not statistically accurate to put those two numbers together and say
Right.
it like that, but it's like, and that's
It's a
only like
majority.
reported cases, right? That's
We
only
can call it a majority at this point,
the
right?
majority. I think so. I think it's safe to say that. And I
Yeah.
mean, you have all the credentials in the world to be able to say a majority. So thank you. So if the majority of women have been subject to violence or harassment, that's going to leave some trauma, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. So how is that going to
Absolutely.
impact women in the workplace?
So I'll start with an analogy that I use a lot in my work. And so a lot of the situations that we get into, especially as we get older, and I want to make a quick distinction. If we're talking about a severe traumatic event, anybody dealing with PTSD and active flashbacks and stuff like that, of course, I encourage everybody to tend to that first. So if I'm stepping into a realm of that, I want to make sure that I'm nurturing that too, because it can be a very slippery slope of where we talk about it academically or talk about it theoretically, and then all of a sudden something gets triggered and it turns into that crisis point. So I'm
Okay,
just
so
going
should
to
we do a
use
trigger warning before we get into the rest of this conversation? Is that what you're saying?
kind of just mostly, I don't think I'll go far enough to get to that point.
Possible trigger warning for our viewers?
Yeah, exactly. Or just keeping in mind too that I think if anything else, it brings another great point to that we're here having a conversation about women in the workplace, and do we need to consider whether or not we need to warn triggered women that this might be too hard? It shouldn't be too hard to talk about how to be an entrepreneur as a woman. But anyways, here we are.
Yeah.
And we're doing, I think, the really important work to make that conversation easier. Back to the trauma stuff. One of the examples that I like to use is, so say you're a family of origin, you're raised by, two parents, and they fight a lot, and you're 2 years old, and all of a sudden things get really heightened. Somebody starts throwing things. You're 2 years old. You think, okay, obviously it's not safe. I'm going to go hide under the desk, or I'm going to go hide in my room.
Yeah.
So at 2 years old, you have then told your brain, when conflict arises, if I run away and flee and hide, I'm safe.
Yeah.
And that's a perfect reaction for a 2-year-old in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect reaction. You flash forward 20 years and 30 years, you're getting an argument with your partner, and all of a sudden things start getting heated. If we don't do the work to recognize where that trauma spiraled, and what and honor really where it came from and how it affected us, when we're 30, if we have that reaction of, oh my gosh, things are getting escalated, I need to run away and hide, throw on women in the workplace too, of, oh my gosh, like she can handle her shit, or heaven forbid she get emotional. No, it's just that at one point in your life you learned how to survive, your brain encoded that, and now every time something that biologically stimulates that same kind of a feeling, your brain's going to go, oh, I know how to fix this. We go and hide. This is what kept us alive before.
Yeah.
And so I like to use that example because it is a really, I think, easy one for a lot of us to relate to. And, you could use the same metaphor for a larger trauma. And of course, as I said before, that's going to be very, very different results. So I'll also throw out in there that if anybody is dealing with anything like that and finding that come up in the workplace and wants to talk more about trauma within feeling triggered, please reach out. I'm very, very happy to help with that. As mentioned before, I've worked with trauma and crisis a lot. It's not my specialty anymore, just because I don't feel like I can safely dive into somebody who is in crisis and really offer them the support through an online platform. But if you feel like you need more support, I can find it for you. I know there are great therapists all over the country and have great referral sources. And otherwise, I'd love to just have a conversation about what that means for you personally, if that is something that you're dealing with, because I think a lot of us do, and we don't even realize it. If we go into a room and we get scared and our first reaction is to run away, yeah, it seems normal. But if we can break it down and think, oh, well, I guess I've been running away from things my whole life that scare me. Where did that come from? And then we just trace that back and honor that.
Yeah.
And then kind of see the patterns. And eventually we build new neural pathways to where when we go, oh my gosh, I'm scared. What do I do? Okay, I'm scared. You do whatever you got to do. If this is my thing. Okay, I'm scared. I'm a little bit uncomfortable. That's okay. I'm here. And then I proceed from there.
Yeah. Beautiful. So first of all, I just want to say thank you so much for offering to support the people in
Yeah,
this group. So folks, I'm going to post Robin's contact information in
thank
the
you.
comment section below. If you want to reach out to her, you can. She does sliding scale. She does pro bono work, and she's actively taking on new clients. So I encourage anybody who is looking for some more support in this area to reach out to her. Obviously, brilliant human being
Thank
with a
you.
huge heart. So
Thank
we
you.
are lucky to have you. So trauma showing up in the workplace. You said doing the work, like to honor it. What is that, like using some of the modalities that you mentioned, like CBT, or what does that look
Yeah,
like? And how can
anything really. I mean, so basically just showing up for yourself, I think is the easiest way that I can say doing the work. Um, as simple as even for me getting started with all of this stuff, I'd have days where I am like energetic, I'm on a roll. And then all of a sudden I get to a point where that next thing's submitted or, this next thing's finished and I'm out there. That same exposure thing we were talking about.
yeah.
And I immediately want to start like reverting back and going, oh my gosh, what does that mean? I'm scared. I'm scared. I'm scared. What does this mean? What if I fail? What if this?
Yeah.
And for me, that just means what's being triggered in my own internal process based on my own psyche and my own psychological things that are being triggered, whether it's from trauma or whether it's just from, something as simple as lack of sleep, or maybe I should just check in and make sure I'm not about to start my period in 2 days because
Yes.
that'll affect things.
Mhm.
There are plenty of times where I'm having a week and I'm thinking I can't get a single thing right, or I'm just messing it up. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh yeah, duh, I've got hormones raging through me. It doesn't mean that those are any less valid. It just means I'm doing the work to realize that's where that's coming from. Or
Mhm.
I'm doing the work when I start snapping at my boyfriend left and right that he's not doing this right or this right or this right. That what I need is to have this certain level of acceptance with him in myself, or what I need is to slow down and see what processes that I'm really doing. And obviously those processes are different for everybody, and there's countless great ways that you can tap into that, whether it's finding books, podcasts, talking to a therapist. If you're into spirituality, that is a great way to connect and just ground. But really just doing the work means focusing on yourself, and within that, that also means dealing with some really challenging and hard decisions that it's not going to be easy. It's never easy to change and to evolve, and that whole notion of going through the fire to get to the other end is going to be there, and
Yeah.
it sucks, but if you can get this far, you can do it, I promise.
Yeah. So it sounds like kind of like doing the work can look like really kind of like finding out what's going on with yourself and
Yeah.
then like finding out what you need in that
Yeah,
moment
I think that's
and
a
then being
perfect
gentle with the process.
summation of where, like the way I see it
Yeah.
is just doing the work. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like same kind of thing. If somebody who's, needs to lose 75 pounds, like what work are you doing? Doing the
Mhm.
work. Like we all know that there's work that's required of that. If
Yeah.
you're having months where your daily functioning is getting inhibited and these themes are coming up in your life that are causing you distress and causing you emotional discomfort,
Yeah.
there's work to be done there.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean I know what it is, but
Yeah.
it might not even mean that you know what it is, but just
Mhm.
say, okay, I need to do the work. And
Yeah.
so often, once we name that there's a problem, the answers start pouring out, and
Yeah.
it becomes really a lot less scary than we think it is.
Yeah, and I think that really speaks to things being a process and not necessarily needing to know, like, the end outcome
Right.
before we get started. I always use the analogy of driving at night when it's raining, because, it never ceases to amaze me how terrifying that is because you can't really see much beyond where your headlights are, right? And, like,
Yeah.
but somehow, I've been able to drive thousands of kilometers and not die.
Yeah.
You just need to see what's in front of you and do that, like, get there, and then the rest of the path becomes clear,
Yeah.
and I think that's such a good, like, a
Absolutely.
stabilizing story to tell
Yeah.
myself.
Well, and another great way to even expand in that, I love metaphors. So if I geek out on metaphors, like, oh my gosh, all the time. So like you get home from that like drive or wherever it is that you're going, and then all of a sudden you can look at the weather, you can see how much rain you went through, you can see what the roads look like, and you can go, holy
Yeah.
shit, I went through all that. Sorry, I keep cussing, by the way. I hope that's okay on here.
Oh, it's fine, yeah, we're sweary people here.
Just
For people who
realized I'm
don't
like, I think it's
experience
the
them,
third or fourth
don't
time I've
understand.
dropped.
It's please, it's all good.
But just to be able to look back and say, okay, well, so I just walked through that storm or drove through that
Yeah,
storm. And it's
yeah,
a similar thing that I think we can do when we're doing that work that we're talking about is
mm,
we just do it as long as you're willing and open and recognize something's not working, and
mhm,
how can I get the help that I need to work through it, or how can I access the part within myself that knows how to work through it.
yeah, amazing. So it's, like, so simple the way that you're explaining it, so thank you.
Yeah,
So
thank you.
if I was, like, a brand new entrepreneur and I was, like, lying awake at night, going through the what ifs
Hmm.
and having, so as, like, one thing that's happening during the day or at night, and then during the day I'm having trouble and anxiety with promoting myself, and I'm feeling, like, overwhelmed and scared. What are, like, three sort of things that you would recommend from a mental health perspective to kind of manage that?
Absolutely.
So
So the what ifs, we're always going to be dealing with those, right?
yeah.
I would say the first thing is just be aware of how many hypotheticals you're spinning in your head.
Okay.
Um, we can lie in bed and think of the what ifs, and there's plenty of literature out there that says write it down. Write down your to-do list, write
Uh-huh.
down this, write down that. But more than anything, for me and my experience, and especially working within women, because we do get very cerebral and very intellectual about just what we're going to do. Um, Count how many times you've thought of those hypothetical what ifs. Is there one that makes sense? Perfect.
Yeah.
Honor that.
Yeah.
Find ways to move on. I know it's easier said than done, but if you're looking at it and you're all night thinking of hypothetical what ifs, and before you know it, you have like somebody from 15 years ago who's going to come in and make the hypothetical what if even worse, recognize that you're on a maladaptive neural pathway, and there are plenty of ways to just hop out of that.
Okay.
And one of the best ones, and I'll kind of do this real quick and then I'll move on to that, but the next section of that. But definitely don't lie in bed. My rule is I'm not the best sleeper, so my rule is I give myself an hour, which sounds like a long time. So if it's everybody's different, and if I'm not asleep by an hour, I absolutely have to get out of bed. Otherwise, I will lay there and start ruminating, and before you know it, my what ifs and my oh my gosh, I'm staying up all night, it's going to be 4 a.m. and I will have written an entire novel of bizarre things that make no sense that I'm sure are going to happen the next day.
Yeah.
So I give myself a little time. I get out of bed, I stretch, drink some water, make sure I check in with myself. Am I feeling anxious? Is this anxiety? Is this nerves? Is this excitement? And some of those can be good too, and then it's okay. And then just again, back to this awareness piece is, okay, if I have two or three what ifs, that's okay. I
Mhm.
got this. If this happens, I'll do this. If this happens, I'll do this. And
Cool.
then I think that also kind of can set a little bit of strength going into the next day when you're dealing with that anxiety. Because it's going to be impossible if you are up all night going, what if this happens? What if this happens? Or what if this happens? Or, oh my gosh, what if I start my period and I'm bleeding all over my pants tomorrow? Like you get to that point where, of course, you're not going to be thinking about your professionalism, your pitch, your this, your that. And so the what ifs at night, and I loved that you asked that question because I think they do lend so well. I think that's a perfect key to again just pause And there's plenty of self-care things that you can do that are out there. Like I said, mine, I'll stretch, I'll get a drink of water, I'll go sit outside, I'll take a hot shower. There are certain things that I can do, and I can get into it more if anybody has any specific questions that they want to reach out as far as sleep routine or just managing stress at night, because it does elevate for a lot of us at night. I think that would be my views, and the invitation that I'd offer listeners is at least a place to start with.
Mhm.
Because obviously you want to get a good night's sleep too.
Yeah.
And then again, with the anxiety, just start building a relationship with your anxiety. And I actually just recently did a podcast, if anybody is specifically dealing with anxiety, that talks about that overall. And it kind of takes a different view than we're taking now, but it does get into some of the more, I guess, theoretical and conceptual ideas of where anxiety comes from. But none of us can throw us completely off of our game. But more than anything, it comes back to this idea of acceptance and understanding, and just pausing and realizing you got this more than you know.
Oh my God, I wish I could hug you, but you're so far away. And also coronavirus.
I know, right? Whenever we can do hugs again, I don't even know. That's going to change things. That's a whole nother podcast, is what that is. How hugging and physical touch is going to be a weird thing to be without for a little bit longer.
Agreed. Wow, Robin, this was like so helpful and so valuable and so stimulating. I have a million great ideas, and like my heart feels so full, and it feels
thank you. Likewise.
Thank you so much. I'm really glad that we got to do this. So for everybody watching and listening, I'm going to let Robin go back to her day in beautiful Sedona.
Thank you.
And I will post the information on how you can get a hold of her on the Facebook group here. But just to be, for listeners, it's Temenos Health, EMENOS health.com. Yep. Robin is offering free consultations, pro bono work, sliding scale work. She is qualified like you would not believe to help you with your mental health. So I encourage you to go to her website to check it out. If anybody has any comments that they'd like to post, go ahead and post them below the video. Otherwise, I just want to say, Robin, thank you so much for your time. This was incredibly valuable.
Thank you. This was a blast, and I'm so passionate about all the work that you're doing. So it's very exciting. Like I said, I had to stop myself plenty of times. I have a couple of notes right here where I'm like, oh, that, and then okay.
Same.
Whole different section. So
I'm sure of it.
And if anybody who's listening, had the similar reaction and wants to talk more, I'd love to. So please feel free to reach out if any of the things that I said sparked anything in you and you have more questions about it, or if anything I said made absolutely no sense, I'm also fine with that. Please reach out, and I'm happy to dive into things more. But overall, just thank you. And thank you for letting me be a part of this group and the work that you're doing. I'm thrilled to see more and more women jumping in here and doing this kind of stuff. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, so for folks that are listening on the podcast later, if you want to join the Female Entrepreneur Mental Health Awareness Group, just search it on Facebook, ask to join, and I'll let you in. Absolutely. Do not forget to subscribe and download to the Feminine Reclaimed podcast. Go to temenoshealth.com to find out more about what Robin's doing. You can visit me online anytime at laurelanstark.com, and I wish everybody a wonderful weekend.
All right. Thanks, Laura. And thank you, everybody, for watching. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay. Bye-bye.
Right. Bye.